Hi, everyone, and welcome into Dodger Heads presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Matthew Moreno, and joining me this morning, Blake Williams. We're recording this video after the Dodgers are coming off another a big win, if you will, in a different sense. It wasn't the NL West clincher like they did against the Padres, but nice little blowout there at Coors Field, kind of cruising into the final weekend of the regular season. Uh, Blake, their magic number for the top seed in the National League and what would also guarantee them home field advantage through the World Series is one heading into play today on Saturday. So basically, it's all but assured, I would say, right, that the Dodgers are going to finish with the best record in baseball. They need one more win on either Saturday or Sunday, or if the Phillies lose on Saturday or Sunday, then that clinches it. There's been a lot of discussion over whether or not that makes sense. Do you have any sort of strong feelings as to whether the Dodgers should be the first seed or the second seed in the NL bracket?
Not really. I think the second seed is probably a little bit easier of a path to get there, but that's still to be determined depending on where the seeding and all that ends up, which still a lot in play with 2 games left to go. So I think it's looking like it's going to be an easier path for the second seed. But for the Dodgers, they're such a talented team. If they play up to their potential and do what they're supposed to be doing, it doesn't really matter who they play. They're going to match up with anyone. And like we've seen in the postseason pass, the easier bracket doesn't always get you into the playoffs. We all thought last year that the Dodgers would sweep the Diamondbacks or take the series in 4 games, and they lost. Like, that was the ideal path. I think the year before, the Padres seemed like the ideal path because they beat them 14 of 19 times in the regular season, and then the Padres won. And then sometimes you have to go through the harder path and you end up winning. So I don't think it matters too much. The Dodgers just have to go out there and play good baseball. If they play to their potential, I don't really see anyone beating them. And if they come out flat and some of the things we've seen in the last few postseasons, anyone's going to beat them probably. So it's just up to them, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And I think what's been interesting about the different postseason scenarios, you mentioned there's still a lot to be decided. So far, the only things that are set, which is a decent amount, in fairness, are that the Dodgers, Phillies, and Brewers are division winners. And within those three, the Dodgers and Phillies are guaranteed the top 2 seeds and a first round bye into the NLDS. So the Brewers are locked into a wild card series. The Padres are guaranteed the top wild card spot with their win against the Diamondbacks on Friday night, and the Mets also losing. But the Mets, Diamondbacks, and Braves, what order those 3 wildcard teams are going to be in still is not set. And it could even end up stretching into Monday afternoon with a doubleheader between the Mets and Braves because they were rained out last week with the unfortunate hurricane that's hit kind of the southeast of the United States. Our thoughts are certainly with everybody that's being impacted by that. What's interesting too for the Dodgers is technically, like, they knew that they were going to get this first round bye before they had wrapped up the division. Well, not that they knew they would get it. It was apparent that clinching the NL West was going to guarantee them the first round bye, which has been in play now 3 playoffs in a row as part of the expanded postseason format. We had a lot of people telling us, maybe it doesn't make sense this year. The Dodgers have had the first round. This is 3 years in a row now. The Dodgers have gone right into the NLDS instead of needing to play the best of 3 wild card series. There isn't really a secret formula or one set way on how to handle the long layoff between the regular season starting and you're playing your first game in the playoffs this year for the Dodgers. That's going to be 6 days. So the regular season ends Sunday. Game 1 of the NLDS at Dodger Stadium isn't until Saturday, October 5th. Blake, I know you have some of the history of teams, the small success rate of having the first round bye and what it means in the playoffs. The Dodgers, first year around, held workouts at Dodger Stadium like normal. It was quiet. It was empty. Last year, you and I both were there. They opened it up to fans. I was a little underwhelmed with what that ended up being. I think it sounded a little bit grander than the actual number of fans that were there. What do you recall before we get into what Dave Roberts said about how the Dodgers are going to have a different approach this October? What do you recall about their preparations for the NLDS last year?
Yeah, so they said they were going to let in a lot of fans to bring energy to their workouts and make it feel more like a postseason atmosphere, and sounded really good in theory. But then when we were there was 2 sections on field level that were filled up and the rest of the stadium was pretty empty there. So I don't think it worked out the way they were hoping or intended. It seemed kind of like a joke from what they were going with. Like, it was cool having the fans there, and I'm sure they were happy for it, but it just didn't do much in terms of bringing energy or anything. I think it would be a great idea if they actually let in the full stadium and had fans watching and cheering on. And I think it would be a fun thing that a lot of their fans could do and come in and see. But I don't think they're going to do it this year. They haven't announced anything about that. So we'll see. But they do need to change something, even if it's maybe pumping in some stadium noise or something like that. But yeah, it was definitely a letdown from what they were kind of talking about.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I think it was last year, maybe it was 2 years ago. The Braves also opened up at least some of their NLDS workouts to fans, and they had a big group. I don't know if they put a limit on it the way the Dodgers did, or if they just had a higher number that they permitted to go. But that was more in line with what I expected. I think the other thing too that I remember Dave Roberts saying the Dodgers plan to be, I think intentional was the word he kept using, and basically what that amounted to were a lot more situational at bats that the teams were sort of simulating during their scrimmages that they were playing. They would start an inning with a runner on second base and maybe 1 out or 2 outs, or second and third and 1 out type of thing. Second and third with 2 outs for maybe a high leverage relief pitcher. And so, whether or not that stuff quote unquote worked, obviously you can debate. We know what happened against the Diamondbacks in the NLDS, but let's look forward to this year now. Dave Roberts revealed that the Dodgers are sort of shaking things up a little bit. And to your point, we have not heard anything from the team just yet as to whether or not fans will be permitted to attend any of these workouts early in the week. So definitely keep an eye out for that. We'll have you covered on DodgerBlue.com with an article of all the details if that is something that they announce. But from the players' perspective, the team, Dave Roberts, the coaches, what they're planning to do is give them Monday off, the first day after the regular season ends. That's good. That's the same. They're now making Tuesday a voluntary workout day, which I'm sure we'll have to come back. Let us know in the comments what you think of the voluntary aspect of it. But what I do want to add is that the Dodgers historically have had pretty strong showings when they've done these voluntary workouts. I was at one at Dodger Stadium between, I think, games 1 and 2 because of how the NLDS schedule was last year. There's a day off. You and I then drove out to Arizona. It was voluntary workout. Dave Roberts wasn't there because he said he had meetings with the front office at the hotel, but there was a good number of players that showed up to Chase Field for that. So I don't think there should be reason for much concern there, calling it voluntary and thinking, only 3 guys are going to show up. I'm not anticipating that being the case. The line of thinking there, Dave Roberts said, is, to give them sort of a mental break potentially, or at least, 1.5 days, maybe to take it sort of easy. And the Dodgers are going to really ramp up their preparation starting Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, again, leading into October 5th, which is game 1. And what makes this a little tricky too is when you start if you start preparing a little too early, you don't necessarily know your opponent yet. So maybe there's only so much you can kind of do. That might be behind some of the line of thinking. But Blake, given the changes that we heard Dave Roberts sort of outlining and discussing, do you see this as a positive, a negative? It's not really going to make much of a difference. And I want us to judge this without looking at what happens in the NLDS, because I don't think that that's entirely fair.
Yeah, I don't think it changes too much for them. Like you said with the voluntary workout, I think it's kind of a good thing to give players the option to, if they want to go put in more work, they can do that, work out with their teammates. If they think their body needs a day or they need a mental break, that can be a good thing as well. The mental side of baseball is just as demanding, if not more, than the physical side is. So I think there's some benefits to that. Taking a day off on Monday just for the whole team is probably a good thing. Everyone can use the break after the long season. They've definitely earned it, winning the division and probably finishing with the top record in baseball. As for ramping up their practices and all that for the next 3 days, as long as they stay healthy, I'm fine with it. That's like the only thing that matters, in my opinion, there. Like, it can be hard to get back on track quickly after a few days of a layoff there, especially not playing like in an actual major league game. I know you talked about how they simulated like runners in scoring positions and situations last year in their workouts, but no matter what you do, it's just not going to compare it to playing in a major league game, especially in the postseason. So I'm not sure like how much that actually does. It's more just about going, maybe working on some fundamentals, making sure you're in the right place there, making sure your swing feels good, making sure your arm is fresh. Like, I don't think anything they really do too much in the practices are going to change what happens in the postseason. So I'm kind of indifferent on their changes in strategy for this year. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, like, I don't think if they lose in the NLDS, I don't think it's the reason for what they did in practice or anything the days leading up to it. I think it'll just be they got outplayed in the games and ended up losing.
Yeah, and I think, another thing to this too is if there was ever any year to maybe potentially give a player, like if they decide to, have a little bit of a lighter day on the voluntary workout that's planned for Tuesday, this is the season. The NL West, it became a race the last couple months with the Padres and Diamondbacks climbing back into it, and then the Dodgers and Padres jostling kind of down to the final week of the regular season. That's not something that we've really seen the Dodgers have to do. So, hey, if there was ever a time for maybe a potentially a little bit longer of a mental break, as you said, now could be it. And Dave Roberts acknowledged that could, end up being beneficial as well. The other side to this is, and I get why, it feels like it's just the Dodgers because it's the team we cover. People watching this video, that's the team they root for. There's a long list. The list of teams that have had success with having a first round bye is much shorter than the teams that have struggled with it. And it's not just the Dodgers. I know you have a little bit of background on that.
Yeah, so there's been 8 teams or 8 matchups in the NLDS since the wild card 3-team era began, and only the Astros and Yankees have been able to advance past that. The Astros went on to the World Series in 2022, and they faced off against the Yankees that year, so both the AL teams advanced. And then in the NL, no one has advanced from having the bye, so it is a small sample size, and I'm not sure there's too much to look into there, but it is somewhat turning into a trend. I want to be careful with my wording there because it could end up where every team with the bye ends up winning this year, and then we're talking about, well, is the wild card the wrong way to go, and do you want the bye? You just don't know. There's so much randomness in the playoffs that we've always talked about. I don't think there's enough data to actually make a real correlation there. But so far, the wildcard teams have been a bit more successful in these. So hopefully the Dodgers can kind of turn that around.
Yeah, it was definitely surprising as we were kind of going over this stuff, getting ready for this video. I had heard that the Astros were the only team that had, the first round bye to win the World Series. I didn't realize that none of the NL teams that had that had even advanced. And I thought maybe in the American League that there were more teams that were getting past the first round, or I guess now the second round, if you will. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that sort of stuff. And hey, it's not just the Dodgers. And now that's another thing we can look forward to this October. The Dodgers can accomplish a new franchise first in the expanded postseason era that's come with this current collective bargaining agreement. So that's where that stuff stands. If you missed it, Dodgers, again, to kind of summarize everything, they're going to be taking a little bit of a different approach with their bye week this year. They're going to give players off Monday, the first day after the regular season, the way they have the last 2 years. But now Tuesday is a voluntary workout day, which, again, I still would anticipate the strong showing of players, but it's at least maybe a little bit more relaxed for them before they start really ramping things up with workouts Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, leading into game 1 of the NLDS on Saturday, October 5th. Let us know in the comments. Do you think that that's going to make a difference? Would you want to see something different? We're looking to interact with you guys and see, what might kick, maybe somebody will come up with a creative solution for the Dodgers and some of these other teams to get out of the first round. So once again, that's Blake. I'm Matthew. Thanks for joining us.